Hey friends, Darren Bailey coming to you again with another informational packed episode. You probably were with us last week with Joe Cohen, and we talked about the Illinois State Rifle Association and our Second Amendment rights here in Illinois as Americans. Well, here's something cool. Joe came in earlier, and I'd been talking with him on the phone and over the last several months, but I never really got to know him. And isn't it amazing that when you take time and have a conversation with someone one-on-one, how you then begin to understand what makes someone tick. You get to understand their heart. You get to understand their passion and their desires. So Joe came in and we sat down and got all set up. Joe's from Anna Jonesboro. He's got a pool business, a Joe Co. Look him up, and just a really amazing person. And if you missed the ISRA conversation last week, well, you're going to love this week, because we're just going to basically talk about America, Illinois, and our government, because Joe sat down and he said, I got one question to ask you. Do we have too much government or not enough? And that's exactly where we're going to, what the problem, what is the problem, too much or not enough? And of course I said, well, too much is enough, or too much is the problem. And Joe corrected me. He says, well, I don't know about that. And that's where we're going to enter in today.
Okay.
That was an amazing, your conversation with me is just, now that I've gotten to know you, I've kind of got to stop just a little bit and pause and think about the question. I love that. You asked me what our problem was. Is it too much government or not enough? And I just normally answered, well, we've got too much government. You corrected me, and I'm like, okay, where's he going with that? So I'd like to turn that over to you and talk about that.
Well, I like to define the word government, okay? Because a government is a sphere. But what's a sphere? Think of it as a round area. But what is the type of spheres of government? We have civil government, we have family government, we have church government, we have business government. These are spheres of authority. But what's been hijacked is the word government. We think government means Washington, D.C., Illinois, Springfield. That is just one aspect of it. I think that all government should start first and foremost with you drawing a circle around you and saying, I am going to be governed. Now, think about this for a minute as an Illinoisan. If you're an Illinoisan and you say, I want no government in my life, can you imagine a society that this is called mayhem and anarchy, okay? Rules are what we need to live by. For instance, if we are on a plane, Darren, you and I, and it crashes in the Pacific Ocean, and all of a sudden we go on an island. Now, we have a really unique government. It's you and I, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, you plant a little garden, and I say, guess what? I'm entitled to your garden because I'm the king here. You say, wait a minute. No, this is my garden. So we're going to establish some rules. And if I come over to your garden, because that's the only thing you're going to eat, you might even defend that garden. Why? Because rules are what keeps us civil. And without rules, we can't have civility. So when it comes to government, there is a rightful use of government, and there's also a unrightful use of government. There's an abuse of government. So we as a society need to decide how much government we need when I'm talking about civil government. But you can have no civil government if you don't have first self-government. And what is self-government? I don't know people's religious views, but let's go a simple one. Let's go 10 Commandments. Let's go on the latter part of those. Don't steal, don't kill, don't bear false witness, and don't covet. Well, those are simple rules to follow. Wouldn't America be better if those rules were adhered to? Wow, that's like, oh, that's so different. I've never heard that. Sure, you've heard that before. The problem is that every human being is fighting between two opposing forces. That's what Emerson said. Good and bad, okay? Mm-hmm. We're all greedy, including me here. I have to monitor that and say, no, I've exceeded what I should do. When we are self-governed like that, we can provide a future for future Illinoisans and future Americans that gave us today where we are today to make us a world leader. We are squandering the leadership that we've been given. I will often ask if I could bring back someone from the dead like George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, some of my heroes of faith, Patrick Henry, whoever you want to call, what would they say about America when they see it? I think they would weep and said everything we did was of no value at all. They'd be so upset with us because what they sacrificed What did they do? They got together and they pledged their sacred honor, their fortunes, and their future together to form a better government. Why? Where people could be free to travel where they wanted to do what they wanted to do. They broke the mold for us. And I want us to go back to those days where we get to be responsible for our own actions. So the issue is, do we have too much government? Yes. But the reason is, and the only reason is because we as people have allowed it. When we get empowered to believe as individuals, we have the power to change civil government. Why? Because we are the civil government. But we have been robbed of a heritage because part of it is education. You know, I'm really saddened when I was down in southern parts of the states. They're tearing down statues, Darren. There have been some horrible people that statues have been made to. Horrible. But I want those statues upright to remind me that will never happen again.
Wow.
You know,
wow.
When you take away that future from people to realize this abuse and this tragedy, and you take it away, teach them this is wrong. Never may it happen again, because slavery was a terrible thing. And American slavery was just one form of slavery. There's slavery going on today in America that we don't want to talk about.
Right.
And there's slavery been going around from the beginning of time. People have wanted to make people slaves. That's horrible. We need to move past that and grow up. I always say, put on your big boy panties and be responsible human beings. So my goal is to educate every individual I can come in contact with, to remind them of their responsibility to first become mature and be discipled themselves, to make sure they understand limits, and then extend out of them around their family, their community, and then our state, and then our nation. That's how it should work. Why isn't it? We have a lot of obstacles to overcome, and some of those are financial. So that's the beginning part of my understanding of government. And I would say this: whether you are, what religion you are, doesn't matter to me, but we have to decide what truth is. Someone recently told me it says, Joe, there are no absolutes. And I thought, really? So would that statement be absolute?
I love it. I've heard that. That's good.
And you know what? What are absolutes? I'm going to tell you, gravity always works. It does. What are absolutes? That murder is wrong. Yep. It is wrong. Yep. Stealing is wrong. And they're absolutes. And we need to help people to say, if you haven't been trained, because I had a teacher tell me in Carbondale, Illinois one time that the girls in her class did not know that stealing was wrong. They were stealing each other's purses. And I said, do you really believe that, ma'am? She goes, absolutely. She was adamant. And I said, I'll tell you what, can I come to your class? Because I'm going to steal those girls' purses. And let's see if they object. Because if they object, I would say, why are they objecting if it's not wrong? Social injustice, whatever form it takes, whether it's thievery, whatever, inside it's wrong. And the truth is, unfortunately, when you do the right thing, and you who are listening to this podcast, you that have been doing the right thing, I'm sorry that you've not been rewarded the way you should have been, because it seems as though people that do the wrong thing get all the coverage and they get to grand pictures of who they are and what they've done. The truth is, there's a lot of quiet, silent, wonderful workers in Illinois that have done a great job, and in America,
right,
to make it a better place.
Right.
So,
no, that's exactly right. And the question is, where do we go to from here? Our founding fathers warned us of this. Thomas Jefferson said, when Americans figure out they can vote themselves entitlements, democracy will fail. This stuff that you just talked about earlier, I learned in grade school. That was in our textbooks. We talked about that stuff, and I understood history because of that. But it's not being taught today. Life has become very heavily burdened because of taxes. We've got to spend more time working. We come home exhausted, and our schools are teaching woke ideology, and then therein lies this need. I've served as a state representative, a state senator. I served 17 years on a school board. You're serving as the treasurer of the Illinois State Rifle Association. There's these positions that our founding fathers put into place called precinct committee person. And that's kind of the groundwork. And then it builds up. And what is it? The old adage, what does it take, for evil to flourish, for good men to do nothing. And we seem to be in that. That seems to be where we're at today in America. Why?
Well, let me interject here. There's a famous statement, and you know what it is. Life liberty, and what?
Pursuit of happiness.
That is so strange of
Yeah.
a pursuit of happiness. What a simple statement. But here's where we've got perverted. And I use the word perversion.
Mhm.
What is happiness? Now, today, it's about consumerism. If you buy this beautiful purse, you're going to feel great about yourself. It's always amazing to me. They got these beautiful cars and they got this really hot woman to sell this beautiful car as though that woman has anything to do with that car. It's ridiculous. I tell people that know me, I'm not a consumer. I'm not, you can't use me for marketing because we have been sold a bill of goods that your happiness depends upon how much stuff you have. Do you really think the new boat will make you happy? Do you think your new car will make you happy? Do you think another $100 is really going to make you happier? I'm going to tell you something. You're as happy today as you want to be. You choose to be happy. That's up to you.
Wow.
And if you choose to be happy, you are happy. If all you think about is what can I get? What's in it for me? And I'm not taking away from the fact that we want to do better. There's nothing wrong with building and amassing money the right way. And there is a right and a wrong way. You know, I believe in is Aesop's fable, slow and steady wins. You could talk about the tortoise and the hare,
Yes.
you know, and by teaching children these principles. And where we have failed as a nation is we have failed the fathers. And God rest his soul, my father had a father that was very harsh on him and didn't show him what I think was essential to, of fathering. And so my father just didn't have a good model. My whole goal was to break that model. I succeeded and failed, and I hope to God that my children do better than what I did as being better role models and being in control of their anger, their frustration, and managing their time well. Unfortunately, in our society, it almost takes two families to raise, two incomes to raise because of taxes and inflation. You know, it's very expensive, and people have to make hard choices. And I really applaud people that the husbands are the only sole providers and women are home keepers of the home. Any man that's done that, kept the home, it's the hardest job you'll ever have in your life. I'm not qualified for it. When my first child came, my wife left me with a bottle, and I was there for an hour. When she came home, she didn't know who was crying harder, me or my son. I couldn't get him to be quiet.
That is awesome.
It was a world-changing experience for me, Darren. But if we can get the house back in order, every child deserves a father that loves him. And I say deserves that because that's the way God intended it.
Yes.
And a mother that's there, a part of it. And if we can start building back our fathers, and if you're here listening to this and you didn't have a father, I think that you need to be mentored and helped. I'm one of many fathers to other young men to show them this is the right way to be a father because we need tutelage. We need mentors. If we gain our families back, Darren, we can change a lot of the problems we have in America. And, you know, but back to this question is why should I do that? Isn't this a dog eat dog? I mean, I was trained in my public education about social ethics. 6 people in a boat, enough food for 5 people. Who do you throw out? Of course, the old grandma. That's who you throw out. Is that really what you do? Really? Is that really what God wants me to do? How about send me, let me jump over, let the others live? I think that's the example I see. I mean, because here, I'm going to get a little religious here for you. You have, whether you believe in God or not, I'm going to give you an example. This is a historical account. You've got Jesus on the cross. And you know, what's the first thing he says? He's not about him. He says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they do. Then he looks over and says, hey, this is my mother. Take care of her. He's got several things. He's always got his mind about other people.
Wow.
And then finally, what does he do? He says, oh, I'm thirsty. You know, and if the highest thing we can do as American Christian citizens or just Americans is we can serve our fellow man. What greater task? Isn't that what you're doing in the political realm that you're doing, Darren?
Wow. That is awesome.
It is.
Yeah.
And service, it's called second fiddle. Everyone wants the first position.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
But you know what? The great heroes of faith that I've read, and no, they're unsung heroes. You don't get to hear about them. One day I hope to meet them. They've done their job. They were dutiful to the very end. And that's what I want to do. I want to be faithful and dutiful to the very end. No one's perfect. I mean, you're not perfect. I'm not perfect.
Right.
But what we can be is on the road to perfection of show me where I'm wrong. Teach me. I don't care what your religion. I don't care what your politics. Show me where I'm wrong. Let's make a better world for the world itself.
I love that.
Consumerism will not make you happy is the bottom line.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't make you happy, what will is the question.
Mm-hmm.
Is I think the satisfaction that comes from hard work, ingenuity, creativity is a satisfaction itself. And seeing what you raise up from your children, having a good and secure place for them in the country you live. Think if you live in a foreign country, you don't think you're worried about your children?
There you go.
So I think that's where we should start in the family. Of course, I believe that ethics and values are essential in the family. Without them, what's right and what's wrong? If we don't embrace, and if you think it's neutral, that the church and the teachings of that should be outside of political views or government views, excuse me, what you're really saying is you want your morality to be my morality.
Exactly. Yes.
And I may agree with your morality, but I may not agree with your morality. And who's going to win? We're both on the island again.
Right.
Am I going to take your pineapples you're growing?
Right.
Are you going to stop me? No, we're going to come to agreement. These rules will govern us. So I think we should be a rules-based society. We should work hard in putting self-interest aside for the greater interests of society, which who wants to sign up for that?
Right. Well, where do we go from here? You seem to be, you told me earlier you don't sleep much. I know you're a hard worker. You're a successful businessman. You're a volunteer out there. You're working hard. Where do we go from here? Because here's the reality. At what point does society get to that it is impossible to turn back? I have a ton of people. I believe in hope, the hope of Jesus Christ, my Savior. I believe in hope, and it's interesting because Admiral McCracken wrote the book "Make Your Bed." I was reading that the other day, and he had a statement that hope is the most powerful force in the universe. And I thought, wow, when I heard that, because several times on the campaign trail running for governor, I was told that hope is not an option. And I'm like, wow, no, I don't think so. But what do we do with where we're at today? And gosh, what point in time are things exhausted here in America?
Okay. I listened to that quote the other day because he was that McCracken did a great job about hope. At least you're successful making your bed. That's how you start your day. What a great quote. But let's talk about hope for a minute. One of the things that we've lost in America is critical thinking. And critical thinking means sit down and think, and it's going to hurt. Your mind probably is not used to critical thinking. And so let's do some critical thinking here just for a moment. Let's talk about destination. Do you plan to go somewhere today, Darren?
Yeah.
You've got a destination in mind.
Yep.
And whether you realize it or not, you're going to probably need a vehicle, need keys for that vehicle, gas for that vehicle. So you plan it, but it's kind of routine. You just don't think about it. Everyone in this world has a destination. Let me ask you, where are you going? Well, you say, what do you mean, Joe? You mean today or for my month or this life? You should set goals. Harvard Business School set undertaking. That is, they watched these graduates from Harvard to see why they were so successful. And what they found out was the people that were successful from their program made 1 month, 1 year, 5 year, 10-year goals that they wanted to achieve. And a goal has to be measurable. Even in myself, I've set goals for myself personally in business, personally with family, personally with my church, everything else, those goals, and they're measurable. What happens when I don't measure up? Well, this is where I feel sorry sometimes for people who don't understand this. I wear 3 hats. I am a husband, a father, and a business owner. And any given day, I succeed at 2 and fail at 1. Okay. So what you do is you change the hat of what you failed, and you go to that one. And it's true. If you sit and think about that, you will. So the hope is that if you think, where do you want to be tomorrow? Where do you want to be next month? Now, you're not going to get there by sitting on this nice chair that I'm sitting on now. You're going to have to roll up your sleeves, do some work, use your mind. We have one of the greatest tools ever given to man. It's called mass media. It's called you can get anything you want to and read about it. I'm sorry, you're going to have to sacrifice, turn off the ball game. Don't go golfing today. Spend 2 hours reading about a subject you want to learn. Become good at what you do. They say master craftsmen take 10,000 hours, I believe is what it takes to become a master craftsman.
Wow.
So I think that comes out to be like 5 years, I think is what it, if I remember right. I'm just remembering this. And so if you do that, you say, well, it's impossible. 5 years will be here before you know it.
Mhm.
It will be. And if you make incremental changes, believe me, people around you will notice them. And the hardship is find someone else and encourage them to do it. Because guess what? You can encourage yourself with hope all you want to, but sometimes when you reach out to say, hey, like today when I realized about you, Darren, you're doing a good job. And I'm happy about that
Thank
job.
you.
I'm
Bless you.
happy. No, you blessed me. You did. But
Mm.
so this hope is rooted in the fact that you need to have a destination. Because how can you have hope if you don't know where you're going?
Right.
And what's
Right.
interesting is when you go on vacation, you just think, well, let's get in the car and just see where we
Mhm.
go. You have a
Got the
destination in
plan.
mind.
Yep.
You got a plan. That's what I want to tell you as an American, Illinois, and whoever you are listening. Get a plan. And you know what? Do not accept no.
Mm.
You cannot fail unless you give up. Look at Lincoln, how many times he failed. Look at whoever you want to. And I can tell you I have failed more than most people. But you know what I had? I didn't know that I shouldn't give up. I just kept with it and stayed with it. And I want that for everybody. Why? And it doesn't get necessarily easier. There's no nirvana that one day, oh, I got her made. I've got millions of dollars. I can sit back and just do nothing. Is that really what you want for your life? Is that the best you can think of yourself? Don't you want to try your metal to see what you're really made out of? That's what challenges me.
Mhm.
The personal pursuit of, I think I can do better. And I want that for you, Darren. I want that for me.
Right.
I want that for your children. That's what makes America a world leader and has been. We've lost that because we've gotten consumed by consumerism of this. I mean, it's literally idolatry of how it makes me feel.
Yeah.
Wow. Be independent. Who cares if someone doesn't like me? It's
Right.
okay. Stand for virtue and value. Our world needs virtues and values and what's right to do. Without that, we're back to what you said. How far can you go before you go off the abyss and there's no coming back? I look at it that God has been holding his hand of the evil in America. And lately, what has happened is just like the Jews. The Jews said, we don't need you, God. We'll do it our way. And then came a guy named Adolf Hitler. Oh my gosh. And then they want to blame God for abandoning them. My forefathers abandoned God a lot sooner than what, quote, God abandoned them. And today, as we abandon God because we're going after the pursuits of materialism, things that do they really amount to much in my life? 100 years from now, will that new car really mean much? No. But if you value something, I'm investing in a fellow human being. I'm investing in my son. I'm investing in my spouse. Wow. Now you've made a difference because their life is going to impact the next life. And we are the recipients of the past generations. We're standing on great shoulders. What are we going to do? I hope to God we rise up to the challenge of hope and say we can make a difference.
Wow.
So I would say that without hope, you are lost. But with it, we can just about overcome anything, Darren.
I love that. Well, thank you. And that's you as a business owner, me as a farmer. It's this adversity in life that doesn't. There's never a year exactly the same. It's the same way with business. And I always tell people this adversity. This is what builds character. This is what makes us strong. When we overcome, when we continue to persevere against all circumstances, we keeping on. And wow. Well, thank you. I could tell when I first met you. I guess the initial question I have is, where's your books at to read? Because you're a wealth of knowledge, and thank you so much for that.
I can't help. I'm driven on the inside to know. My mother said that I was curious as a little boy, and she loved me because of that. But there's something about me, and I've never talked about this publicly before, and I'm going to tell you this today. There was a first grade teacher. Now, I'm 65. And you know how long ago that was, 60 years ago. Her name was Mrs. Hubert. To all you teachers out there, thank you. Mrs. Hubert is long since been dead. But I thank you for your contribution to my life. You set a fire in my mind to be curious about things, and it's still on fire, and there's no ending. It's going in north, south, east, and west in all different directions. My mother got a phone call from Mrs. Hubert. You need to come in to talk about your son. So, of course, my mother thought, my son's at it again.
What did he do? Yep.
And so she said, Mrs. Cohen, I've never seen a child do what your son did. My mom hung her head thinking, thanks, Mom. She said, a little girl had fallen down and she was crying and sitting by the monkey bars. And your son came up to her, put his arm around her, and said, "It'll be okay. Don't worry about it," and sat down and calmed her down. I have never seen a first grader ever show compassion, empathy. And I think I got that from my mother. She's very compassionate and caring. She had to be, being married to my father. But that being said, is that I do care passionately for people. And I can't help them, Darren, if I'm not educated. And granted, I don't sleep much. I think 4.5 hours is what I need. And you put that over 30 years and reading 3 hours or 2.5 hours a day. And Sundays are my real reading days, 6 hours. And I love to, I'm curious about everything.
And being educated doesn't always mean having that plaque or that diploma on the wall. We are educating ourselves every day with every experience. We have everything available, especially like you mentioned earlier with the social media. We have everything at our fingertips. We can read, we can learn. I love it.
You know, the summation of who you are is what you are in past years or what you've learned. And to make good decisions, you need to continually thrive to grow with new knowledge. Because without that, you become stale. I call it sitting in neutral. Well, the acronym is SIN. It's sitting in neutral.
Oh, my goodness. That is awesome.
It is. So, and believe me, there is no neutrality in this world. If you think you're hiding out, that's all you're doing. You're deceiving yourself because either you're marching forward or you're going backwards. And really, the real question, when you look in the mirror, if you're not happy with yourself, okay, forgive yourself, get up and make a difference. How hard is that? And it doesn't matter how much around you that they don't support you. Say, Joe, you don't understand the environment. Look, I know that some people's environment's very tough. It is absolutely tough. Is that an excuse to do the best you can with what you've been given? Do better.
Wow.
And what America I look for, I want this for the whole world because I'll tell you, the whole world is growing, whether we realize it or not. And of the 8 billion people, don't you think those people want more energy? Don't you think the rest of the world wants what we have? What do you think they're going to do when they see the minority of a population like America consuming as much as we do? What are they going to say? Well, we'll soon find out in the years ahead what they say.
Right.
And I just believe in human potential. It's unlimited of what we can do.
Wow.
So unleash it.
Wow. Right there. There you go, friends. I can't, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Joe Cohen from Anna Jonesboro. He's the he's the treasurer for the Illinois State Rifle Association. He's got Joe Co. He builds a pools. He's a hard worker. Look him up. You may see him more on because you're just a wealth of knowledge. And thing. It's common sense knowledge.
And if it's not common sense, I don't want theoretical because I live in the trenches. I work every day. Like I may work a little more because I struggle sometimes working too much. But I want to quit with one quote.
Okay.
If we're done.
Yes.
To tell you about the character of a man that you can go to the Washington, D.C. to see a plaque for him. His name was Nathan Hale. I don't know if you know him or not. One of my heroes, a 19-year-old young man who I did a
Facebook Live right in front of his statue about a month ago. Okay. So
all right. Well, here's the deal. Here's a 19-year-old man. Now think about 19-year-olds today, and here's a 19-year-old man back in colonial America. He has been spying for the American patriots against the Redcoats, against the King, His Majesty, and he's caught. And back in those days, spies were hung. And when he was being led to the gallows to be hung, terrible death, they gave him his last request. And his statement was this. Now think about this as a 19-year-old boy, 19-year-old man. I hope I can live up to your call, Nathan, and that is, I have but one regret, that I have one life to give for my country. That is a man that had hope. That is a man that wasn't concerned about what's in it for me. He had a vision for the future. We need Nathan Hale, that spirit, to come back to America of what's in it for me? No. How can I serve this greater cause to make America great? Not because America's great, because the spirit behind this is we want to free mankind everywhere. I hate slavery in any form, in any fashion, from dictators to whatever you want to call them. The freedom of movement we take for granted here. And history teaches us that if we take it for granted, we'll probably lose it.
Wow. Wow.
Thank you, Darren.
Wow. Friends, I can't sum it up any better. So thank you for tuning in. If you have ideas, send them to me, Darren, Darren at BaileyForIllinois.com. And thank you so much for tuning into these episodes and your support, your prayers, and your hard work. We'll see you soon.